I'm Justin Lamb, and welcome to another edition of A Walk in Time. Today we're in the Harvey community speaking with Miss Ruth Agnes Riley. Miss Riley, thank you for allowing us to come talk with you today.
You're perfectly welcome.
I'd like to start out with just the basics, asking how old you are, when your date of birth was, and who your parents were.
I'm 94 years old, be 95 in September. I was born September the 8th, 1921. I came from Lynn Grove, Kentucky. My parents were Ivan Carter and May Crawford Carter. Okay.
Okay, what did your father do for a living? Was he
Farm.
Was he a farmer?
Farmer.
A general farm, just
Tobacco, corn.
okay.
They didn't have soybeans then, I don't think.
What was your schooling like in the Lynn Grove community?
Well, Lynn Grove school I always went. It was from the first grade to high school senior.
Okay. Who were some of the teachers you recall?
Buren Jeffrey was the principal. Later he was superintendent in Galloway County. And his wife, Modest, she was Clark then, and she was a history teacher. And Eula Mae Dowdy was my home ec teacher. And Sally Howard and May Lawrence and Thelma Jones Thomas. She married a guy from Benton later.
Okay.
But she was from Lynn Grove.
Okay. What were some of the subjects that were taught in school at the time, and what was your favorite subject?
My favorite was home ec.
Okay.
And there was English and history and math and reading and writing, cursive.
They don't do much of that anymore. My
No,
nephew's 8-year-old, and he don't even know how to write in cursive.
No, they can't read it.
Yeah.
A lot of them can't.
Yeah. So you grew up in the Great Depression. Can you tell us what times were like during the Great Depression?
Well, we owned our farm. So we had a cow and chickens and vegetable garden. But people would come. We lived on, it's a blacktop road, 94. And people would come in covered wagons and begging. There's always hungry. And I remember Mother always had biscuits, and she'd fix eggs and, stuff like that we had. And I guess we didn't know this, the Depression. I remember one time there was a family came pulling a baby in a little wagon, and the wheel was broken, and my daddy fixed the wheel on it, and they stayed in our barn that night, or stables, and Daddy sat up all night. He was terrified they'd smoke and they slept on the straw. And I remember Mother gave the lady a self-addressed stamped envelope, and when they got to Arkansas, they wrote her, they made it.
Yeah, that's a good story.
And another time, the first time I saw my daddy cry, I asked him for a nickel for a tablet, and he did not have a nickel.
Yeah. There was a lot of people back then didn't have much money. The money it wasn't there. You had to rely on yourself and the community to help each other.
Well, everybody around owned their farm. We had food, and we hardly knew we had a depression.
Were you able to attend college?
Yes.
Where did you go?
Murray State.
Okay. What was Murray State like back then?
I can't remember how many was there. Yeah. Of course, it's much smaller.
Yeah.
And I rode with the bookkeeper. He had the bookstore. I rode with him, and then my parents sold where we live and bought a mile further down. So I lived at college then. And I got to tell you a funny story. I won't tell you his name, but he was from up north. And some of them from up north kind of thought we were stupid or something. And so I had a class with this guy, and he carried my books and was so very nice to me. And I had a locker, with numbers on it. Okay, one day I went to my locker. There was not a book in my locker. So I went to Mr. Lee Clark that I rode with, and he was over at the bookstore. And he said, yes, I bought all these books, but the flyleaf was torn out. And always, I don't know why, but even in high school, on page 125, I wrote my birthday, September the 8th, 1921. So I told Mr. Lee, I said, look on those pages. He looked and he said, we've got him. He said, you want him out of school? And I said, no, I just want my books back. You get your money back. And that boy never spoke to me again. I'll never forget that.
What did you study in college? What was you going to be? What was your
Home ec.
Home ec.
Home ec
Okay.
major.
Home ec major. After you got through with college, did you finish college and
No,
then you started?
I went 3 years.
Okay.
And then they were needing teachers, so I got a teaching certificate on an emergency certificate
Okay.
in 42.
Okay.
And I was 20 years old. I had never been in a one-room school. It was a rude awakening.
Where did you? Was this your first teaching job?
Maple
Where-
Springs.
At Maple Springs in Fair Dealing here in
Right.
Marshall County. How did you get on a job here in Marshall County? Did you know?
Well, my college roommate was teaching in the county, and she told me they were needing teachers. Holland Rose was the superintendent then. So I wrote him, and so he hired me.
Okay, take us back to that day in 1942 when schools were one-room schools. Tell us how they were, what the conditions were, what the students were like.
Well, Maple Springs, they didn't have many windows, and they were so dark. And we had a pie supper and raised money to buy paint. And I can't remember, I know who painted Church Grove School. But anyway, someone in the community painted the school white. You know, there was no electricity in there.
What courses did you teach there with the students? I imagine, how many students did you have?
I can't remember. Church Grove, one year I had 67,
Wow.
grade 1 through 8. I didn't teach them anything, I just babysat. If they didn't want to learn,
Yeah.
and they all, the 8th grade would help the little first graders and vice versa.
Yeah.
And children were well behaved then. There wasn't any discipline problem.
Well, you kind of had to act not only as the teacher, but as the principal too, didn't you? With
Everything.
had to do everything for them.
And at Church Grove, there was children, of course, they all walked. But there was one family that had several children, and those children wore sandals in the winter. And I had to build a fire, couldn't get anyone to build. We had a coal stove. And I pulled off and rubbed little feet and dried socks. I never will forget that. That was, I don't know why they didn't die, but
Yeah.
they didn't.
Did your the school system at that time, these one-room schools, did you have any organized sports like baseball, softball, or basketball?
I don't know if it was baseball or softball,
Yeah.
but we did that, different schools. And I cannot remember how we got from one school to the other. Probably walked, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, I can't remember.
Okay.
And
So
then-
you went from Maple Springs and then to Church Grove.
Church.
Did you teach anywhere after those two schools?
At Brewers,
At Brewers. Okay.
yeah, 6th grade,
Okay.
1 year. And then I did substitute work for years, and then discipline got to be a problem, so I quit.
Okay. All right. Let's back up a little bit. You started teaching around World War II. Is this about the time you met your husband, the late Talmadge Riley?
No, I met him in 40.
Okay.
And he went to the service in May, and I went to see him in August in Texas, and we were not even planning to marry, but we did, at Palo Pinto, Texas, and it's a long story about no new clothes, nothing, but anyway, we made it for 72 years and over. So,
How did you meet Mr. Riley?
I hitchhiked from college, used to, that's how you went everywhere, and it was safe. So my roommate and I hitchhiked to Murray, and it was raining, and he had a car, and he carried me home.
Okay. So did he get drafted into the Army
He went in May,
in May?
May
Okay.
the 28th.
And then they shipped him overseas during World War II, is that correct?
Yes, he stayed in different camps in Texas, Bowie and Hood and Swift and Walters. And then he went in March of 44, I believe it was.
Okay.
And he was captured in the Battle of the Bulls in December 17th, 44.
Okay. I had the honor of getting to speak with Mr. Riley before he passed away, and you were here, and we were talking about that. Can you recount the time that when you heard and learned that he was captured? Do you remember where you were, what was going on? And
I was visiting his parents, and they brought a telegram. And I can't remember who the man was that had the telegram office, but he stopped at a neighbor's because he didn't know what the telegram said. And it just said that he was captured. And that's all we knew till March. And I lived with my parents at Lynn Grove, and the postman, mail carrier, I heard him honking just loud. And there was a card, and it was all in German, except Talmadge's signature. And he had stopped everywhere he thought that the people knew how to read the German language, and to see what it said, we didn't know. And that was the night my sister had her baby, and they asked my sister if I was the grandma. I was so excited. And she told her I just heard my husband. Well, at least he was alive at that time, you know. And then we had to send him typewritten letters, and he never got a one of them in prison. So anyway, and he came home the 16th of June, 45.
okay, all right.
And his daddy was down, had a stroke, so, you know, it's sad.
Yeah. How many? He come back home, and y'all resumed your lives after World War II. How many children did you all have?
4.
You had 4. Can you name them for us?
Yes.
Yeah.
The oldest one's Ronnie,
Okay.
Ronnie D., Dennis Carmen, Darlene Riley Miller, and Craig Thomas Riley.
Okay. And years later, when Ronnie got older, he was drafted into Vietnam.
He was.
Can you tell us about that experience and as a mother, how you felt with your son being overseas?
It was
Vietnam?
horrible, and his daddy, a lot of nights didn't sleep.
Yeah.
Thinking what he went through.
Right.
Because he was in, I believe, 4 major battles, Talmadge was.
Okay.
And so Ronnie, and that's how Darlene met her husband. He was Ronnie's sergeant. And Ronnie wrote and said, or something, anyway, said, this guy, no one writes him much. So Darlene started writing him. And so he came by to see us, and there he was.
Ronnie and I talked one time, and he was telling me that story about Larry and Darlene getting together, and he said that every soldier, you know, tends to bring a souvenir home, so he always said that Larry was his souvenir that he brought home.
He was from Western Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Well, Ricky, your preacher's brother.
Right. Could you tell when Talmadge was in World War II, the war effort versus the war effort when Ronnie was in Vietnam was a lot changed.
Right.
The country had changed a lot since then, and them boys kind of got the shaft on over there.
Well, I think people supported the ones in World War II, you know, against Hitler. And talking about Hitler, I corresponded with a girl in Berlin, Germany, from the late 30s. We somehow in English class, we exchanged addresses, and she wrote me, and then after the war, she wrote me, and they were starving in Berlin, and they didn't want to fight, you know. And I remember we went to Mars and Elkins grocery store, and she said had not had coffee to drink. They just had barley, parched barley, and that's what Talmadge had in prison. They looked starved. Some of them did die from starvation. But anyway, so we sent her coffee, a container of coffee.
Yeah.
And some of the old men sitting there in the store thought I was the meanest woman that here the Germans had captured my husband and then sending them coffee over there. But she got the coffee
Yeah.
and had her friends in. She wrote me. And then my last letters came back, and she was in the communist side of Berlin, I feel like. But I've got pictures. Her mother was a famous dress designer. And I've got sketches of the clothes, and just
Wow.
interesting.
That's an interesting story. Talmadge, when he was captured, he lost. I mean, he endured so much
Lost
torture,
50
starvation.
something pounds. He was released from prison the 29th of April, and he got home the 15th of June, and he was so weak he couldn't draw water out of the well.
Wow.
Been out all that time.
Well, this country owes folks like him a debt of gratitude. We really do.
Yes, yes.
Well, Miss Riley, it's been a pleasure sitting down talking with you.
Well,
Is there anything else you would like to add?
no.
Okay.
No. I meant to tell you during World War II, they had scrap iron you collected, and one of the boys, Leroy Downing, his daddy, let us have the team, and everyone, you collected your scrap iron and put it beside the road. And we collected it and sent it off. I guess they used it.
Right. They
Yeah,
also
well,
had victory gardens and things
Yes.
like that. Do you remember those when
I
they
know
had you didn't?
I didn't remember those, but I remember us collecting a wagon load of scrap iron.
Yeah.
You know.
All right. Well, Miss Riley, I appreciate it.
Well,
Thank you
you're
very
welcome.
much.
Enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a walk-in time. I'm Justin Lamb. Until next time, thank you.